What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Perfectly Blended Podcast, Season 5, Episode 16. Today, we have an amazing interview that's coming up
right now.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Perfectly Blended Podcast. This podcast is for blended families, for couples that want to strengthen their marriage and want a brighter future. Perfectly Blended exists to break the stigma of divorce, drop the shame and guilt holding you back, and equip marriages to thrive instead of just survive. We believe all that is possible in this life is based on the power of Jesus Christ and His ability to restore us fully. Let's dive in. What is up, everybody? Welcome to today's show. You know when you crack a joke during that and then you almost get the giggles and you can't get rid of them? Yeah. Well, that's what's happening. So, on today's episode, we have an amazing couple that we're going to introduce to you in just 1 second. But before we jump into that, what's on your mind today, my love?
I'm just super excited about this interview because we want to help blended families, right? And we don't need to just talk about stepkids, bio kids, parenting, marriage. We need to include and encompass financial things for blended families in that, right? And on this episode, we finally get to talk about financial planning from a professional.
Not us bozos.
Right.
What do we know?
We don't.
You don't want to take our advice, trust me.
No.
We'll go on a trip. That's what we'll do.
Greg should actually financial plan us.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so without further ado, I want to introduce to you our guests that are on today. All right, everybody, I'd like to welcome today Greg and Johnita Pettys. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Great to be on. Thanks.
So we're pretty excited to have you guys on. We had an opportunity to find out a little bit about you at the summit that we were at, and we've been blessed to be able to have a few different people on our show from the summit. So, it's just been a real big blessing. I want everybody to know on the screen, there is a book that Greg co-authored with Ron Deal. Ron has been on our show multiple times. Most of our viewers and listeners know who Ron Deal is. So this gives a little bit of credence to Greg and his ability and his knowledge. So we're great with that. But it's really important that everybody knows, we have never really had an opportunity to have a professional come on our show and talk about finances. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about. But before we dive into that, why don't you guys share with our listeners and viewers a little bit about who you guys are each and how you guys met?
They're Michigan State fans. We do know that, everybody. So
That's right. I was born in Lansing, Michigan, and I just love the state of Michigan. It's a great state. For all of our Wolverines, I'm still a Michigan. I love just Michigan in general.
Well, we met when Greg's career after his divorce took him from Cincinnati, Ohio to Evansville, Indiana. And I grew up near the Evansville area and was teaching in Evansville. He met my dad first, and I guess dad approved. He met my dad first through Lions Club activities, and he knew that my dad had 2 older daughters who were married already, and then this younger daughter who was a teacher who wasn't married. And so we all ended up at a convention in Denver, Colorado one summer. And
summer of '88, wasn't it?
He and I met there summer of '88 and got married summer of '89. So
her dad was a great guy. I mean, how could I lose with him introducing? Fantastic.
Yeah. So when we got married, his children from the previous marriage were 8, 5, and 3. Right. So they were in Cincinnati where where he grew up and where they still lived with their mom. And we were in Evansville, Indiana. So about a 4-hour trip every time we went to see the kids, or they came to see us, or we'd meet in the middle or whatever. So started off right, as blended families do, started right off with kids and the different.
And she's an amazingly gifted person because she inherited an 8, 5, and 3-year-old. And she was only 23, is that right? 24?
24 we got married, yeah.
And so you can imagine, the weight of that and all the initial, shock.
I think being a teacher helped. So I was not totally unknown to kids. So I think being a teacher helped. But so we then added 3 kids of our own to the family. And so we have 4 boys total. It goes boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, boy.
20 years apart.
Threw off the pattern there at the end. So added 3 kids of our own. So you do get the big-eyed look when you say that you have 6 kids, and people are like, "What?" They're just not used to that big a family anymore. But
Or when she was 24 and we were at the state fair and they were trying to guess her age with an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
We got a lot of teddy bears out of that one.
Oh, that's great.
That's funny.
So I guess 1998 we moved from Evansville, Indiana to Springfield, Illinois.
For our career. And we've been blending all the way.
Yeah, that's great. So do you have any kids still at home now?
Our youngest just finished junior year of college. So he goes to school about an hour away from us. He was on campus freshman year. COVID happened. Wow. He was home sophomore year and everything was online. And then he was back at school for junior year. So he's home this summer, living at home, doing an internship here in town, and then we'll go back for senior year. So
real proud of Blake. He's pitching for Illinois State University club team, and got a 3.9 GPA in kinesiology. So he's going to be a
strength and conditioning coach.
Strength and conditioning coach. Yes, right.
Yeah,
so he gets his smarts from who?
His mom. All of them got their smarts from their mom.
That's a good answer.
But we've got a good variety of children. It's been a real good lesson for blending. I'd say a couple of them are, pretty close to geniuses, like she is, and they're all gifted in so many different ways. We have a gemologist, we have a national park ranger, we have a Navy pilot, we have a wedding planner who owns her own company. And we have a very special needs needs son. And so you just put all that together and just put it in the blender, and it's taught us so many things.
No, you don't put it in the blender.
That's right.
Put it in the crock pot.
Somebody's read the book.
Don't put it in the blender.
I should know. Yeah.
So
I think this is such a testimony, though, and I think people need to really hear what's happening with you guys right now, that you put the time and the energy in and keep Christ at the center of what's going on in your lives. And it's easy for us to see the victories in the stories in the Bible. It's hard for us to live in the beginning portions of it, though, when we're battling through it. And a lot of people that watch or listen are in the battle phase, in blended families.
Josh,
and so,
you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and you get to hear some victories that you guys are having going on, and that's amazing.
And I don't know if you've heard about our major victory, but we had 28 good years, and somewhere in the latter part of that, I kind of began to get pride. And the thing about pride is that I discovered is you don't know you got it, but I certainly did, and I was deceived. And our marriage went on the rocks. This was our remarriage. It was on the rocks in 2017. We divorced, and the miraculous about this is God granted me the gift to see what I had lost and to repent and to humble myself, get back in counseling with her, and we are in our 3rd honeymoon year of a remarriage from a blended. So, we've been reblended.
Yeah.
And the Lord has been so gracious. You can imagine, the odds of remarrying after a divorce is very, very low. Without the Lord, it would have been impossible. But it was neat, getting to know each other again, dating again, and just the beauty of falling back in love was a gift from the Lord Jesus, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for first off sharing that. That vulnerability is amazing. It's helpful because not everybody's willing to share those things that happen in their own personal lives. And so, first off, thank you for that. And second, I think it's important for people to know that we may not be able to see the possibility, but God can. And if we rely on Him, things that we just don't think can happen. And so that's just amazing.
But her willingness to be forgiving and just the heart of Jesus. She's never, ever brought any of this up, never even hinted at it, never been an attitude of it. She's been just a pure angel about the love of God and demonstrating to me what that really means.
That's awesome.
I love that.
Yeah. So what made you guys decide to start helping blended families?
The church we went to,
20 years ago, 21, yeah, 20.
they wanted to start a blended family ministry. They had they had divorce care, they had grief care, they had a lot of other kinds of ministries, and they wanted to start a blended family ministry. And they approached about half a dozen of us couples that they knew were in blended families, and they asked us to go to Ron's seminars. So one or two couples at a time went to different locations and went to the seminar as an attendee, went through the weekend as an attendee. And then we hosted at our church and brought Ron in and had a seminar at our church, and then opened it up to people to start the small group from there.
Was that about 2006, 5, 6, somewhere in there? I believe it
No,
was.
it was before that.
Okay, so let's say it was 20 years ago. At lunch break, at Ron's seminar, he came and sat at our table and asked what I did, and I shared with him financial services, and he said, well, that's cool. What do you like to do on your spare time? Oh, I write a little bit. And he said, I need you to write me an article on prenuptial agreements. And I'm going to run it by our friend Howard Dayton.
Only don't call him that.
Howard is Crown Financial. You probably know. He took over from Larry Burkett.
Wow.
And I said, okay, I wrote it. And it ended up in the lap of Howard Dayton. And Ron said, now he wants to get some guys together for a think tank down in Dallas. Greg, meet me down there. I'll fly from Little Rock and you fly from Springfield. I'll meet you down at the Marriott in Dallas. We're going to have some guys talk to Howard Dayton about his new book about mapping financial matters. I said, okay, I'm willing to go to a seminar. I walk into the Marriott in Dallas and I said, where's the seminar? What seminar? And well, Howard Dayton. He's in a room with the president of Focus on the Family, Bob Lepine, 5 doctorates.
And by the way, Ron got snowed in
That's
in
right.
Little Rock and didn't get to come to the meeting.
So I'm there.
Greg was flying solo.
Without Ron, and I'm sitting in a meeting with PhDs that are they're heads and shoulders above my level. They're talking about their radio programs and TV shows, and I'm just sitting here wondering, Lord, what am I here for? Howard says, now, after about 45 minutes of my silence, and they're all talking, he said, now, when we come back from our break, Greg is going to talk to us about prenuptial agreements. And most of the guys put their shields up and pushed away from the desk and said, we hate prenuptials. We're not going to ever talk about prenups. Prenups are a declaration of what you're not going to get when I divorce you. And I'm thinking, now I'm being crucified. I was on my way to break, and on the way there, I got zapped with a concept that's in chapter 2 of our book, and it is called the Togetherness Agreement.
Mm-hmm.
It's the prenuptial, which has some elements that are very important in financial planning for blended families, but there's so much animosity in a prenup. It's basically a declaration of future divorce and what you're not going to get and what I'm not going to do. But we got our heads together and thought, well, if we just turn that thing upside down and shake that animosity out of that prenup and insert some agape love. And now it's things like, we're not going to give you the company that's going to our previous children, but what we will do is put $1 million of stock in a nice trust for you to live on for the rest of your life when I'm gone. And when you're gone, it comes back to my children. But we're not going to, let you have the inheritance that my father left me. But what we will do is put $1 million worth of insurance in a trust to help you and your children. So instead of this is not what you're going to get, it's just a lot of clarity around emotionally laden issues. So that's how I met Ron and how it kind of developed, because from that meeting, Ron said, we're going to write a book together one day.
And that still took several years.
About 10, I think. Yeah. About 10 years later, we wrote this Smart Step Family Guide to Financial Planning.
For instance, one of the things that's in our Togetherness Agreement is because he has a special needs son, we can't leave an equal amount of money to him because he cannot.
He'd be disqualified from federal Social Security and the state of Ohio Medicaid.
Right. So the other 5 kids know when things are shared equally among the other 5, but the idea that they all know they would help the 6th brother when and if he ever needed it.
And we have a special needs trust with life insurance being put into that at my departure. So James, my dear son, will have everything that for his special needs. It'd be for those extra things, tickets to the ball game, season tickets to the Kings Island in Cincinnati, and other things that he would really enjoy. So
that's cool.
I don't mean to ramble, but that's how we met Ron, and that's how it kind of developed.
Yeah.
No, I think that's great. That was going to be our next question, so I'm glad you just led right into it. So, Johnita, how do you feel that the friendship or the relationship with Ron over these years with Greg has added value to your guys' own personal family?
Ron and Nan are wonderful, and I know Nan's, I think, able to travel more with Ron than she was maybe, in the past, but we still look back on things, just like a while ago when he accidentally said blender, and I'm like, no, it's a crock pot. I mean, I still can visualize, and as a teacher, I saw those things playing out in my classroom sometimes.
For sure.
He does that example where the kids got the luggage and they're tied to the parents with the ropes, and this happens and that happens, and suddenly the kids caught up in all the ropes. I would see that play out sometimes in the classroom as the teacher, then seeing those. Well, mom and dad won't come sit down at the parent-teacher conference together, but I also saw some wonderful instances where they did work, and bio mom and stepdad and I say it right, both bio parents and both step parents would all 4 sit down together and have a teacher conference with me. And so I saw those kinds of positive things too. But
and it's not just great for emotional, health, but we'll probably touch on a little bit today about college funding. When couples sit down to do their FAFSA forms for their college-bound students, there are some really neat, very small adjustments that couples can make to enhance the potential for their children to receive grants and scholarships.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, my son, is, I told you guys before we even started today that my son goes to Michigan State University, and having a blended family has given him some opportunities like you're mentioning, Greg, that's really a leg up, honestly, a huge advantage. Not that being part of a blended family is an advantage, because we've struggled on so many things. Like, it doesn't outweigh it by any means, but but there is small wins, which I do want to dive into that later in the show. I really want to, share with, some knowledge where people could gain from that from later. But we personally have, experienced some wins from things of that nature that most people may not even know about. And that's
great. You must. It doesn't surprise me because you're good communicators. So you must have had time with the other couple to chat about a few things. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's been rough over the years for us, but ultimately, he was important. My son was the important part of it, and even though we have a hard time communicating, we did what was necessary to make it work out for him, and that was the important part. And sometimes it's easy, and especially Johnita, as you as a teacher, you see how this could be one extreme to the next with people at school, and I believe that you guys having this opportunity really to grow and get connected well with blended families and understand about serving them, can really push over into your position even as a teacher to be able to love on people even in a different way.
Our blended family is a little bit different too, is that he has 2, I have 2. But his daughter isn't biologically his daughter. Mm-hmm. So when he got married to his now ex-wife, she had a 2-year-old daughter, and then they had a son together. And then when they divorced, she came with her brother. Mm-hmm. And then I had 2 boys. So when him and I got together, we had, 1 girl and 3 boys. But that added a little different layer of blessings and and issues to our family, but we've gotten through it. And our kids, all 4 of our kids are like best friends. They love each other.
And we're still working through the dynamics of older children choosing to harbor pain from the previous divorce. And it's been good for me to learn how to let go, truly let go. I remember having not heard from my oldest son for 3 years. I woke up one morning, and you know how sometimes when you're in that when you're just waking up, the voice of the Lord is more clear to me. And I heard the Holy Spirit speak to my spirit along the lines of, you be the father to the ones that want you to father them, and let me be the father to those who don't right now.
Wow, that's good.
It's so released me, Josh, when I truly handed over the 2 of my older children that right now are still working through some things, should-haves and could-haves and would-haves and comparison with the younger family, and for me to truly give it to the Lord and say, okay, I'll father the ones that I can, and if the ones I can't, would you please? And He is, and I know that we really do believe that God will restore and heal because we've seen it in our own relationship, in our marriage.
Yeah, you can tell by the way you're talking about it that you have peace about it.
It's not been easy, but there is peace.
Yeah, those are really 2 majorly different things. We can have peace about something, and it can still be difficult.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you believe is the single biggest financial difference between nuclear and blended families?
Financially.
If I could start, I think it's the concept of, what does fair mean to us? When I bring that up in financial planning, there's usually a good 15 minutes of discussion about fair. And I think the best synonym that I've heard from other couples is equitable. What is equitable? Because, and as like Johnita mentioned, in our situation, we can't leave 1/6 of the estate to our special needs son. It will disqualify him from the things he needs. So what is equitable is not going to be exactly the same. I think with a nuclear traditional family, being fair is easier than having the blend. And that's not the way it was when we first were together. And that's not the way it is now. But so you've got all the dynamics of what was told the children from an earlier age, and then what was told the other set of children and their expectations, and then what we are developing an agreement over. We experienced that with college. It's almost almost like anything else with parenting. The first child comes through, you make this decree, this is what you're going to do for college, and then the second one doesn't want to go to college and takes another little route. Well, are we going to spend the same amount of money? Probably not. Then the next one gets a full ride scholarship to the U.S. Naval Academy, and they're paying him to go to college. Now, at one point, he looked at us and said, hey, since I got the scholarship and you don't have to pay me, can you just allocate that for like my first car or my?
Of course.
Down on a house.
And then my special. So the whole, what does fair mean to a parent? I think changes drastically, don't you, with a blended family?
Yeah. So something that comes up a lot for us is when people get together into a blended family, into a second or third marriage, and now, what is your feeling? Do you have a steadfast feeling about joining accounts, bank accounts, checking accounts, savings accounts? We have our own personal feelings on it, but we're not financial advisors neither. So what is your take on that?
And there's more opinions than ours.
Yeah, we have a lot of opinions.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, we joined everything right from the start, but I didn't have previous kids I was bringing into the marriage, but I know from the financial end of it, that does probably have to be really looked at in each person's situation. But
yeah, there's no absolute right and no absolute wrong. One bucket of money, two buckets, three, four. To me, having accounts is like having keys. Some of the keys on her keychain, I also have on my keychain. We both have a key to the front door. So let's say that's a joint account in my analogy.
he likes analogies.
But then I've got a key to the YMCA that she doesn't, because she doesn't belong. She has her own workout regimen. So she doesn't need that account. That's the account that I need. But I think the important part of this is no matter how many accounts that we have, that we are absolutely 100% transparent, that there's no money secrets, and that we have agreed upon governors, dollar amounts that we can only go up to and spend without each other knowing.
Agreed.
And that's an agreed upon number. Okay, anything over 100 or anything over 500, whatever it is, each family has to determine their governor. But no matter what your governor is, you have to be transparent and be able to show your spouse your individual account and what you're doing. I think.
Yeah.
Transparency is where loyalty, trust comes in, and feelings of unfairness don't have any place when you know secrets.
Well, hopefully that transparency was from the start too, that you're not bringing secret debt or whatever into the relationship.
That's a good point.
Hopefully that's all coming out before the marriage. But
if I could have, I don't know, a perfect scenario is premarital counseling includes your credit scores, a list of your debts, your credit cards, your debts, and your income, your net worth, and your goals. I mean, when we were dating to get remarried in 2018, it was just a wonderful year. We sat down, and I remember it was at the Olive Garden. We were talking about our dreams and goals, our needs, our wants, and our wishes. And I remember we both agreed that we wanted to buy a new house together.
Because we were both renting at the time.
After the divorce, we sold our home. Yeah. And we were both renting. And the neat thing is, Josh, she reached her hand across the table onto my hand where I could see she didn't have a ring anymore. And she said, I guess you should know that I'm going to need new rings. And as soon as she said that, the gentleman in the booth right next to us at Olive Garden, or it was Red Lobster, dropped on his knee right out there about 7 feet from us and proposed to his date.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now that's a story.
That's not a bad confirmation, I think.
No, I think it's great.
Like when we got married, we came from very different financial backgrounds. My dad was very much of a budgeter. I mean, I watched it. I remember when I got my first teaching job and I realized that I was making almost as much money as my dad had been making in his later years, and I was like, wow, and he made it work.
He was very frugal.
My mom was a stay-at-home mom, so but knowing how to budget and having not necessarily pockets, but I mean, he put money aside for things and save for things if he was going to do a bigger purchase, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, his mom was not of that mentality, and he came from a very different upbringing of what you did with money. And
my mom spun the globe and said, pick any country in the world, we're going to move, when I was 11. I mean, she was a spender. Yeah. And I think in many couples, there's a saver and a spender, and you have to discuss your financial personality and your risk profile. The financial personality is, I think, more important than any other natural gift set that you come into in your marriage. So if you're a saver and you marry a saver, God bless. But if you're a spender, you marry a spender, and neither have you have had any budgeting experience, woo! Amazing Grace, come on, Amazing Grace.
I think I would actually be more of a saver. When him and I first got together, I didn't want to spend money on anything except for bills. That's it. And he was like, no, we're going to go on a honeymoon, which I didn't go on with my first marriage, and things like that. And he turned me into, he dangled that carrot in front of my face. And now it's like we go on trips, like we take our kids, like this is experience, we take all of our kids on trip. We've only done it a couple times.
I don't quite spin the globe. Okay. It's not quite that elaborate.
But we go on cruises, so we go like whatever. But so now he's turned me into where I will try to save. And he's like, you only live once.
Well, okay. It's not
that's
that
a good,
bad.
that's a good, combination. It's a good combination,
Yeah.
I think we do complement. As a couple, God puts us together with complementary traits. We just have to talk about them, get them out, and then maybe help, nurture each other. I wouldn't say retrain, though she has said that mature dogs can learn new tricks.
Yeah.
That's what the phrase. She doesn't say I'm an old dog. I'm a mature.
He's cooked more in the last 3 years than he did in the first 28. I'll say that.
He's learning. He's maturing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
that's
do
good.
learn, especially after the second time. We learn things.
Yeah.
That a man can do nothing wrong in the kitchen.
No, that's not what I said.
When you were talking about the accounts and bank accounts and stuff, something that we've noticed too, and we've even had friends in the past that were blended couples, and they get married and they get together, and all of a sudden the husband is like, I just found out my wife had a $20,000 maxed out credit card from her last marriage. And the reason I bring that up is because with transparency, there's lack of trust, and we already have trust issues going into a second or third marriage. We're already weary because we don't
grief.
Or grief from a death, maybe. So we're already hesitant. So, it only takes a little bit of something not go right for that trust to be just really hard to reclaim. And so, that's why I really wanted you to kind of share on that. And I'm so glad that you mentioned the important part is being open and honest about it. Everybody has their own path, but it's honesty that's going to make the difference.
Would you say that's the most, like, if you had specific financial advice to give blended family if they're getting ready to be together, or even if they've been together for a while now? Because we know couples that have been like, no, we got married and it's his money, his account, my money, my account. But then if you talk to them, they live very separate lives. They live more like roommates, than anything else. They never joined anything to come together to join their lives. So if you had specific financial advice for blended families, would you say transparency would be what you would tell them?
Because I mean, keeping everything separate, I think just really shows fear. That way, again, it's almost like, well, when something happens, I can just take my money and go. I mean, it just seems like that's being very fearful.
Yeah, I think regular discussions on date nights. When you're on a mountaintop and you're at that candlelit Italian beautiful dinner and it's romantic and all, sharing some reality there too. So, honey, how do you feel about buying that boat, or would you rather put it aside and be, how do you feel about, talking about real things can being romantic is one thing, but sticking together in peace, in harmony is another. And until I let her know my personality is a spender, and please help me with, overspending, I'm just going to cause a problem for us. And until, she can tell me she's afraid of losing this or that because of a previous relationship. So I think we talk about this in our book. For every fact if you throw out a fact, child support, underneath the tip of that iceberg is a huge emotional laden underpinning. And the more that we can get down into the underpinning with each other, I mean, the more intimate we can be. If if she knows I'm afraid every time she says, vacation, I don't want to spend money. Um, or if every time I say that child support, it makes her feel, you know, guilty for having to pay extra dollars, So I think regular communication and being aware that there's a lot of emotions underneath the facts and being gentle, patient, like she's demonstrated to me so many times, that to me has been a key is discussion about weaknesses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that's one thing he sees in his business world more than anything is just questions people haven't thought to ask. He often starts, business discussions just asking questions, and often it's things people had not thought to ask.
A good one is, so what does fair mean to you? So in this situation, husband, wife, what looks fair here? What does fair look like to you? That's a big one. And how do you feel about, that's always, before we make this decision, how does that make you feel? How do you feel? And let them vent, the good, the bad, the ugly, and circle back in prayer, keeping Jesus as the center. I could tell you that's probably the number one reason that we're still together after 31 years with a big valley in between, is we spend time each morning in the Word of God together, praying informally, just praying like we're just conversing with the Lord together. It's 5 minutes here, 7, 8 minutes, 10 minutes. It's not lengthy.
Yeah.
But we have our favorite Bible reading. We usually play audio Bible, and we go through the New Testament a couple times a year, and we just listen, and then we pray. Help us, Lord, with this situation at work. Help us over here with the kids. Or what should we do about that? We're just conversing together. Isn't that been, I think, the key to our sticking together?
Yeah, it's the intentionality of your relationship. You're mentioning financial decisions. We have to be very intentional with that because, Johnita said something about living in fear. It's easy for us to live in fear and not want to talk about certain things. Christy and I talked about it just the other night about something even off topic, not even financial, but I don't want to tell her to not use her phone because I don't want her to tell me not to use my phone, and jokingly, but I believe that is an easy way to put up walls in our relationships and say, I don't want to talk about this financial thing that I have an issue with their kid because I don't want them to point a finger back at me about my kid. And so being intentional in our relationship and saying, I care more about us growing closer together and stronger is really where it's at, about financially, about our marriage, about becoming closer, about growing cleaner and closer with our relationship with Christ together. And so, I love that message you're saying because it's important. It's God can heal it.
Well, the other thing about it is that most adults are broken adults. They were raised by broken parents, just like our kids are being raised by broken parents, no different.
For sure.
And when you go to someone for advice too, some people don't like to feel stupid. So when you ask them a question that they've possibly never thought of themselves, they internally instantly go on the defense because they feel like they should have known that because they don't like to look stupid. Or you have one spouse that wants to say, I told you so, as soon as you get in there, type of thing. So it above and beyond finances, the communication and the discussion, that's why it's so important, because people are already going in potentially with their own baggage if it's at the start of their relationship. And they are already on the defense, ready to point the finger at the other person because they think they've thought of everything. So I can only imagine, how, because I was one of those people. Like, I'm like, I have thought of everything. Okay. And I didn't say it out loud, but that's what I thought. And then you go in somewhere, and you're talking to someone and they bring it up and I'm like, oh, man, why didn't I think of that? And now I make fun of it, now I'm just like, oh, I should have thought about that. Dang it. But I used to get defensive because I was broken. I grew up and had a lot of hurts in my life. So I was a very defensive person. So you probably turn into a therapist sometimes a little bit.
What we do is financial therapy.
Yeah.
And in a multitude of counselors, there's safety and victory. One of the proverbs says it's safety. One of them says there's victory.
Mm-hmm.
But without a multitude of counselors, people fail.
Mm-hmm.
And people ask me, Greg, can we do this on our own? I said, sure. I mean, I can pop a frozen dinner in the microwave and have a pretty decent eat. That's fine. I can do it myself. But if I'm really wanting to serve my family the way that I want to, I need a recipe book, at least. I need to buy a good book and study the recipe book on how to make it. But I also would bring in an expert to do the fillet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not good with that. I burn the meat. I'd bring in an expert for the fillet, and I'd bring in someone to do the saute, Asian vegetables or whatever. So it depends on the level of your financial sophistication, let's say, or complexity. Some of it you could do on your own. There's a lot of good opportunities to do that, more now than ever. But I still have a financial advisor. I have an attorney. I have a CPA. And I surround myself with people that are smarter than me. That's why I married her. And so I believe in a team. I believe Jesus did. I believe Jesus believed in the team approach. But, putting Peter, James, and John, the sons of thunder, along with Levi, they were trained to terrorize. The tax collector, and then throw a few fishermen in there and shake it all together. And, wow, look what you got.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
So I believe in one of the first steps I tell is financial planning is all about teamwork. It's about being humble enough to ask the CPA or recommendations about tax advice, and ask your attorney, do I have the proper structure? Is my power of attorney updated? Does my will look like it's up to speed? These are basic documents every American family should have. Wills, trusts, powers of attorney for finance and healthcare.
Mm-hmm. My sister just passed her bar. She is a lawyer, and that's what she does. And her and I were out together a few weeks ago, and our grandma is almost 90 years old, and she doesn't have a will. We just found out. And so my sister was like, you need to call her over your house, and I'll meet there, and we'll do it. So we were doing it, and while we were sitting there, she looked at us, and she's like, do you guys have wills? Do you have POAs? Do you have this? And we were like, no. And she's like, we're doing it right now.
What a gift.
Because she sees, she sees now because she's in it all the time, and she sees the turmoil it causes families, if they don't have that.
Especially with minor children. If we don't name custodian for the children, the state you live in will have a conservatorship, and they'll appoint someone to take care of your kids. Could be that your kids get raised completely different than what you had in mind.
That's scary.
Not to mention, we don't want to put the burden on our children to decide what does artificial resuscitation mean after we've gone into a coma. You want to have that in writing. And you can probably get that whole set of documents completed, depending on where you are in America, somewhere in I just ballpark, $500 to $1,500 range, somewhere in that range, depending on if you're in a rural area or a big city. It's worth every penny to have those documents to hand to your children and say, look, if this happens, you don't have to keep me plugged in. Just send me to glory. Or if this happens, this is what I meant. I want you to have that. And the reason I want you to have that is because I give this over here to your brother, because it's not exactly equal, but it's what you both need to maximize your gifting in the earth.
Yeah. So earlier in the show, we mentioned about college, and you were going to kind of elaborate on that a little bit. Won't you help our viewers and listeners know about this piece of gold that you have in your pocket?
Again, we've learned a lot from, our mistakes and from having 6 different arrows in the quiver when it comes to college. And one of the things that I've discovered, and it's in chapter 8 in our book, The Smart Step Family Guide to Financial Planning, is that the Department of Education, which is the department of our government that stands behind the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid that you have to fill out at least the year of your senior year of college, of high school, going into college, and then every year after. the Department of Education doesn't care who has legal custody of the child.
Mm-hmm.
It's the parent's set that has the child the most calendar days in the year
Mm-hmm.
that is obligated to fill out the FAFSA. So let's say we're blue collar workers. Let's just say we're making 60,000 hardworking Americans with great values, and my ex is a rocket scientist that's making $1 million a year, and she married an open heart surgeon making $2 million a year, and all right, and they have custody. If we would have just chatted a little bit, and we had Johnny live with us just 3 or 4 more days during the summer, 186 days versus 184, something like that. Mm-hmm. If we would have just had our son just a few more calendar days in the year of his senior year, then we would have been the ones responsible to fill out the FAFSA. What would that have meant is that with our lower income, that our son would have had a much greater chance of scholarships and needs-based money, grants.
And that's huge too, because number one, college isn't getting any cheaper, and it's expensive. It just is expensive, and it's really hard. Cost of living, $5 a gallon for gas. All these things make it really, really difficult for us to save.
$5 here.
It is here.
We don't know
but
what
it's
it is there.
But it's it's close. It's like $4.70, I think, right now. But my point is, it's not getting any cheaper. Wages aren't growing in accordance, with year after year. So, it's hard to save up $30,000 an extra year per year for college. So this could potentially be an amazing thing, but it does come down to communication. Like you said, Greg, it comes down to communication and say, what is best for this child?
Yes.
Put aside our differences. What's the best for the kid?
When we're filling out the FAFSA, there are 5 types of assets that are not counted. You do have to disclose them, but they aren't a part of what is called the expected family contribution.
Which is always shocking when you see what that number is. You're like, well, I don't know where they think we're getting that money.
That's true. But when they look at your assets, they do not count 5 assets. 1, the equity in your home. 2, the equity in your business. Thirdly, qualified retirement plans. So we're talking about 401ks, IRAs, SEPs, Simples, all the 403b, all those plans that your employer has put aside for you, or that you have done, IRAs including. And then they don't count annuities or cash values of life insurance. Now, so beginning the sophomore year of your high school education or earlier, so it has to be done at least 2 years prior to your FAFSA, you can begin to make some asset allocations. You can do some adjustments and maybe take a CD and pay off, take a CD and pay off some of your mortgage, add equity, or increase your qualified retirement contribution, or move some money into an annuity or a cash value life insurance. Those are just some little tidbits that, if we'd have known it, we probably could have done a little better on our FAFSAs.
Well, to me, that's brilliant, because I wouldn't even have thought of that. Because, moving some cash around or money around into accounts that aren't going to qualify is really going to help, your parents or the kids without having to take out tons more loans, and really hurt them in the future.
You can take one tool like a Roth IRA and do 2 or 3 things like a Swiss Army knife. That Roth is for our retirement. Okay. But what if I told my son, now look, if you maintain a 3.5 GPA and you stay out of trouble, whatever you set as a family, a covenant between the two, parent and child, if you do this, then I'll take my Roth and pay off your student loans when you graduate. Wow. And I can pull money from a Roth tax-free and without penalty if I'm over 59 and a half. But tax-free for anything over if you've had it for 5 years.
Wow.
So you can use a tool like a Roth IRA that is designed for retirement and combine it with some college funding ideas.
Well, this episode has been full of knowledge, and we appreciate you guys' openness and willingness to share, and your knowledge of so many things. I'm going to encourage people that if you haven't had an opportunity to watch the whole show, make sure you go back from the beginning and watch the entire thing. You do have the pause function, so if you want to rewatch it. But Greg, Johnita, tell everybody if they wanted to contact you, if there was a way for them to get a hold of you, how would you prefer them to get a hold of you?
Well, my personal email would be my last name, Pettys, Pettys, Greg, with one G, @gmail.com.
All right. Well, I will make sure to put that down in the comments, and so everybody has an opportunity if they have any questions or want to connect with you, and get some of this stuff taken care of. Maybe that's something you could help them with, or at least lead them in the right direction.
Yeah.
So, man, we are just honored and blessed that you guys were willing to come on today and share. And
our privilege and honor. Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, we really pray that anybody that was on here today, that there's hope for marriage, and there is hope, even though it doesn't feel like it, in the finances that happen in your relationship.
Yeah, we were excited about this one.
Yeah, this was good. This was really good. We really appreciate you guys coming on and doing this.
You guys are really blessing. Thank you. You're inspirational to all of us.
Oh, thank you guys so much.
Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you.
Same. Well, hey, we hope you enjoyed today's episode with Greg and Johnita. I mean, there is so much knowledge that was in today's episode. If you are a blended family, or if you're even going to be in a blended family, it is so important that you reach out to Greg. Listen, just ask for some advice. Just look to him. Maybe there's something that you don't know. And he did mention that today on today's show. So we really want to thank you for being here.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next Tuesday at 7.
Bye.